Why is it that so much of what we consider like kind of classic Christmas sounds and Christmas sounding music is oddly, eerily Hawaiian? There's a lot of it. So like the classic example of this is Mele Kalikimaka. This is like a very Hawaiian sounding Christmas song. But it's not just that. Like even things like Blue Christmas and some of these other like classic songs have these little wisps of Hawaiian sounding music to them. And it kind of
You are listening to Tape Spaghetti, the podcast about the twisted and tangled innards of the music industry. Some of this content may not be for all listeners or viewers, so if it's not for you, no harm, no foul. We'll just catch you on the next one. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Here we go. Hey, this is Editing Blake, and I forgot I needed to tell you something. Scott and I are going to go on a little break for the holiday season here, so this Christmas episode is pretty fitting. Just to try to catch up, I'm doing 3 shows a week these days, so it's a little chaotic, so we need a little bit of time, but we're not going to leave you totally hanging. In fact, we're going to give you something pretty special. We're going to give you the first time Scott and I actually had a long-form conversation. So, if you go over to the audio platforms, you're going to be able to hear, because we didn't record the video for it, because it was not an option at the time, the first time Scott and I did a podcast on the Tone Mob podcast, literally like over a decade ago at this point. That will be the episode for Christmas week, and then we'll try to get back on our regular program here in the new year, and we should have a lot of good stuff for you. We're actually going to keep recording during that time so we can get things stacked up and keep on a nice consistent schedule for you. So, just wanted to let you know, and all right, on with the show.
Welcome back to another episode of Tape Spaghetti. I am Scott Marquardt. This is Blake Weiland, and you are listening to the Christmas episode of Tape Spaghetti, the first Christmas episode of many, many, many to come, I'm sure.
In the meadow we can build a snowman and pretend that he is Parson Brown.
You're going to get us demonetized.
Oh, sorry. Whoops.
No, I'm teasing. I'm sure that is in the public domain now.
I would hope so.
I would certainly think so. How's your week been, dude?
Oh, just typical dad stuff. Waiting on the HVAC guy to come by.
Sure.
You know how it goes.
Somebody's got to be here to receive that man.
That's right. Yeah, well, I'm not letting him in the shred shed unsupervised. Too much gold out here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be that homeowner. So what you got there? Oh yeah, 10 millimeter socket. All right, cool. Yeah, I got a lot of those. I could do this myself, but I decided not to. So I decided to waste all my time by standing here watching you do it.
I thought I would just sit here and watch you. So it takes the exact amount of time, just less effort.
That's right. No, I'm not going to do that to him, but I do have to let him in the house and all that jazz. So
I wish you well.
It's going okay, I will say. I'm a little upset by the potential have to replace the whole HVAC system, but such is life. Could be worse.
I've had to do that myself. I hope that is not the case.
Yeah, we'll find out. But other than that, things are going pretty good. It's Christmas time. We're in the full holiday swing over here. Got a Christmas at Grandma's tomorrow. We're eating tacos. It's going to be a great time. So yeah, I'm otherwise in a pretty good mood.
A taco Christmas sounds like my kind of Christmas, man.
Yeah, it'll be good. And I'm sure it'll be like, and I love real authentic street tacos and the real deal. But I also, because I am one, like white people tacos. I've never met a taco that I don't like, to be perfectly honest. I like them all. So it'll be a taco bar. We're going to have a good time.
A taco's a loose concept. Are you a flour or a corn tortilla man?
Yes.
I have a very specific opinion on this matter.
Yeah. For tacos, typically corn. For quesadillas, I kind of like a flour, or a big burrito, you got to have flour. So,
of course. Yeah. For tacos specifically, my belief is that the answer is almost always corn, unless it is a breakfast taco, in which case flour is the correct answer.
That makes sense.
Corn and eggs don't really like go together just right. But that like Austin style, like thin flour tortilla on a breakfast taco is mwah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of like it all. I even like it's not, I know it's kind of not an actual taco, but a hard shell taco
sometimes it just be hitting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you gotta try it all. I have space in my heart for all tacos until the coronary heart attack takes me and they say he ate too many tacos.
I certainly hope that doesn't happen.
I do too.
It's going to be a lonely podcast.
Yeah, you can be in there. So, Blake, what do you think about The Who? Oh, he's dead. So, yeah, that would be a terrible podcast.
It would be rough.
But I expect you to carry on without me.
I will. I promise.
Speaking of carrying on, what are we talking about today?
Well, I thought you were going to ask me how my week has been. That was what we rehearsed,
No, I don't care about that.
Well, so thanks so much for asking, Blake. Interesting story. So
I like that we pretend to not know how each other's week's gone.
That's true.
No. How has your week gone, Scott? Please tell me about your life.
It has been good. So I live very close to a couple of like bars and restaurants. One in particular that I go to a lot called Vinyl Tap that I probably mentioned on here before.
I love
and
Vinyl
the weird
Tap.
thing about when
I
you
had
like
tacos
live,
at Vinyl Tap.
That's right. That's right. They used to do the tamale lady. They don't do that anymore. But when you live nearby a watering hole such as this one or any other, and have a number of friends, every time your friends are like happen to be over there, even just one of them, they're like, "Hey, I'm over here," and you're like, I was planning on just like sitting at home and relaxing." But there you are, and I'm actually just really close by, so why not? So a buddy of mine texted me last night. He's like, "Oh, I'm over at Vinyl Tap," and I was like, I was planning on just sitting at home and relaxing." But he was like, "But no, it's cool. There's a band playing, and they're playing like South Pacific Christmas music," and I was like, "That's so interesting," because that's what I was going to talk about on this podcast today.
Yes.
So I wandered my way over, and it was pretty great. It was a lot of Nashville country musicians basically playing South Pacific style Christmas music.
Yeah.
And interestingly, those types of music are not all that different.
Yeah. I didn't you are going to, I think, paint a picture for us today, but ever since you told me what you're about to tell the audience, I've not been able to unhear it in every single song. Yeah.
So this came up. I think I had this idea back in April or May when we were doing this. But I was thinking to myself, why is it that so much of what we consider like kind of classic Christmas sounds and Christmas sounding music is oddly, eerily Hawaiian? There's a lot of it. So like the classic example of this is Mele Kalikimaka. This is like a very Hawaiian sounding Christmas song. But it's not just that. Like even things like Blue Christmas and some of these other like classic songs have these little wisps of Hawaiian sounding music to them. And it kind of became the sound of Christmas in a lot of ways. And so now we kind of hear that and we're like, oh, that sounds like Christmas. And don't even really think about like those are Hawaiian musical themes that are occurring in that music. How can it be? Why is it that Hawaiian music sounds a little Christmas to us these days?
What is that about?
Yeah, so I thought that would be a pretty good topic to explore on one of these here tape spaghettis that we tend to do every so often. And so I've dug into it, and I'm rather excited to tell you all about it. It's an interesting story, and to tell it, we're going to do a light overview of a lot of Hawaiian music to understand how Hawaiian music kind of started to intersperse with United Statesian music, if you will, at the time, and all the ways in which it influenced genres of music today, and of course kind of lead that into this Hawaiian Christmas phenomenon and how it came to be. I think it's a pretty fun story. I'm excited to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, it's really like you teased this. I think it was in April or May when we were first like brainstorming ideas. And once you told me that, I started thinking about it. Blue Christmas, very specifically. I'm like, that's just a Hawaiian song. Like, Yep. I hear it all over the place, and every time it's come on there, I purposely haven't looked into it much because I wanted to hear it from you. So I've been so curious ever since you talked about it. I was like, what is the story? How did this happen? And I don't think very many people know about it. So please.
It's an interesting lens. It runs a little bit deeper than I had initially realized. There's a little bit more of a complex answer to the question of why these things sound Hawaiian, at least to me.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So let's start way eons ago. Let's start in the late 19th century. So Hawaii at this time was an independent monarchy. King David Kaluakua. I think I did okay with that. We'll see. And then, of course, Queen Liliuokalani were kind of ruling the Hawaiian kingdom at this time. And interestingly, like they themselves were fairly like arts focused people. The queen herself composed a number of songs, famously one called Aloha Oe. I'm doing my best Hawaiian pronunciation there, which is kind of cool. Like the actual like sort of monarch of the area was like writing music. That's going to make crazy for a relatively musical society. And a little interesting note about this. So Hawaiian music traditionally actually featured mostly wind instruments, a variety of different, pan flutes and things like this that still kind of exist to this day. But in the 1880s, so just around this time that we're talking about, actually, Hawaiian musicians, basically the steel guitar or lap steel guitar, as we kind of think of it today, was invented and got taken up by a lot of Hawaiian musicians really quickly, famously Joseph Kekuku. And this is that like traditional sound that you think of when you think of like Hawaiian style guitar, that gliding tremolo, the portamento effects that you have from slide guitar. So this was like a fairly new invention at the time, and in many ways kind of took the island by storm musically. A lot of people gravitated to it and started playing it a whole lot. So this is like the sound of the backdrop of this really critical time in Hawaiian history, because in 1893, the monarchy, the king and the queen, was overthrown by a collection of American and European business interests. This is a whole story in and of itself that we won't we don't have time to cover in its
that is completeness. A very complicated and terrible story, actually.
The little I know
about it,
there's a lot of rough stuff in there. We're going to bypass a lot of that because this tends to be a little bit more of a musical podcast. But just know, for our purposes, that all these things are happening really right around the same time. The steel guitar comes around, the Hawaiian monarchy is overthrown, and then in 1900, the U.S. formally organized the islands into the territory of Hawaii. They had annexed them in 1898, and then they were officially organized as the territory of Hawaii in 1900. Which, of course, is going to lead to a lot more American, cultural and political interest in the area.
And sometimes I forget that it was that. I mean, I should say that late. Like it's like, oh, that's not actually very long ago, really.
It's not. No.
Yeah.
No, it's strange to think like that there was like a monarchy. We tend to think of those things as being like hundreds of years ago. There were monarchies,
Yeah, except like in the UK where it's like a kind of a show for a lot of intents and purposes. But having an actual functional monarchy that is the de facto government is like that. Oh, that was only like 125 years ago. That's not that. That's a really fairly recent, just a couple generations ago.
Yeah, 100%. And, at the same time that this is all happening, like I mentioned, the Hawaiian guitar gets invented. But in 1893, so right around the time of the overthrow itself, we have the World's Fair in Chicago. This is the famous World's Fair of which you've heard very much about, H.H. Holmes and all of that sort of interesting stuff. But one interesting thing that happens outside of a lot of people being murdered in a strange hotel in Chicago is that there's a troupe of Hawaiian performers that come to the World's Fair for a Hawaiian exhibit and are playing traditional Hawaiian music. Now, it's funny, I say traditional, they are bringing traditional things like the ukulele as well as the rather new steel guitar at the same time. So the ukulele comes in, the steel guitar comes in, millions of Americans are, at the World's Fair, and even the people that aren't at it are reading all about what's happening at the World's Fair. Like, this is the biggest thing of this whole year, maybe decade, for a lot of people that live in America. Like, this is the biggest cultural moment. Everyone wants to know what's there. And so people coming from, what at the time especially seems like a very exotic, faraway place that most people haven't heard of, and bringing this interesting new music that doesn't sound like anything people had really heard before is an incredibly novel thing and a real kind of breakthrough moment. People are like, I want to hear that music. What does it sound like? Yeah. We have turned Hawaii culturally, at least in like mainlanders' brains, as like
kind of a normal place, excuse me. Like it's like, oh yeah, we went to Hawaii, and it's not at all uncommon to hear somebody say that. But if you actually look at Hawaii on a map, it is remote and far away and exotic. It's a long ways out in the middle of the ocean.
It is in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
It is. I think if I remember correctly, it's one of the most remote islands from like, as far as distance from a continent that is out there.
Certainly amongst like islands that are that heavily populated.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. There are even remoter ones that are really small, but yes, it's very much in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. Crazy how common it's been in the American culture to just like go to Hawaii. Back then, that probably sounded like you're going to go visit the pygmies in New Guinea and the deep jungle. And that's how it felt to those people. So to have this music explode out of there, I can see why all the curiosity was there.
Yeah, that's a lot of its appeal. So, basically we have like a couple of these different elements that, forge this primordial sort of stew of the story of Hawaiian music, which is that there's a lot of intrigue on the political side. What with the overthrow, the people that live in the United States are becoming, increasingly more and more interested in Hawaiian culture because now this is a territory. I mean, imagine now if we just took over some far-flung place in the world and it becomes an American territory. There's going to be a lot more eyeballs paying attention to that area than there certainly had been before. Everyone's like, the what? The where? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you have this novel new instrument, the steel guitar, and you have its cousins, the ukulele, and other things coming to America and bringing this interesting, enchanting music that no one's heard before. All these things really combine to the American public really wanting to hear this cool, new, odd sounding music that they hadn't really heard before. And that's what happens. Touring Hawaiian troops start coming to America and popularizing that sound nationwide, going on the road because there's a lot of appeal to it. A lot of people want to hear it. And so there's money out there to be made and people show up and form these troops and start bringing it all around the world.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. What a exciting time too that had to have been for a lot of people. Just as far as like the general American population, like what a crazy thing. And to experience it coming to you, it had to feel extremely exotic. So it's just trying to put myself in that state of mind.
Yeah. And as you noted, modern. I mean, this is an era where they're not like going and buying a CD or pulling up an app on their phone to hear these sounds. Mm-hmm. Hearing a live group of people that you're like, oh my gosh, they came from Hawaii. And they're bringing their instruments with them, and they're going to bring the sounds of Hawaii to Madison, Wisconsin. What an incredibly rare treat. Mm-hmm. So this becomes a big thing. You start to see these Hawaiian groups of musicians on the vaudeville circuits. People want to hear it and want to listen to it. And this evolves into what's known as the Hapa-Haole. Yes, there it is. I actually researched how to say some of these words, and then I've had to remind my mouth how they work. So the style known as Hapa-Haole, which specifically, I've got a little tab pulled up here. It means basically half Hawaiian or part Hawaiian. Okay. Hapa was a term that the Hawaiians developed to say the term half in their own language. There was no word for half. And that kind of got brought over, I guess, by the Europeans. And so they kind of came up with a word that fit in their linguistic style to mean it. So this style of music is basically, like it sounds, half Hawaiian. It's typically having English lyrics and some influence of English music on top of more traditional Hawaiian sounds. And this is what really kind of takes off in this period. Both on Hawaii and on the actual island itself. And of course, in the mainland US where groups are coming around and touring it and bringing this music to everybody. So this becomes a really important style of music at the time. And it's really cemented by the 1915 Panama Pacific Exposition in San Francisco. So this is another World's Fair-like event, though, of course, it's a little bit more zoned in on just the Pacific. By this point, you have a lot of Hawaiian musicians that are at this actual exposition. And you've had, 20 odd years since the World's Fair for people to be touring around and learning more about this. So this is kind of the central moment in this early time where a lot of people are paying attention to Hawaiian music, and it's starting to really, really drive a lot of mind share for people.
Yeah. It's interesting. They had a whole fair dedicated to the Pacific on the mainland, which is that just shows you how much interest there was in that region and area and culture at the time.
Sure. I mean, and it was focusing on, the whole Pacific, which includes like the U.S. is a Pacific nation.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Which is strange. I sometimes forget that we are like both an Atlantic nation and a Pacific nation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big old continent, this one.
It's rather large, as it turns out. Mm-hmm. Yeehaw!
Now, an interesting thing that happens at this time, since you said yeehaw, thank you for that segue, is that the popularity of this Hawaiian steel guitar, it starts to actually bleed into other mainland genres, not just this kind of exotic, specific traditional Hawaiian genre. Specifically, it starts to blend into what at the time was really usually referred to as either hillbilly music or Western swing music, but which you might today call country music.
Yeah. Yes. I was wondering when the pedal steel
like literally where this is
in.
coming from. Yeah. So initially it's just the lap steel, right? The lap steel is the easier version of this. There's not as many bells and whistles and whatnot. But this is coming from right out of Hawaiian music and being adopted and incorporated into what would become country music, which of course is going to lead to the development of the pedal steel guitar and this like very underpinning important part of country music. Like that is such a core piece of the genre of country Western music.
Oh, absolutely. And for the listeners, what we're talking about here, the lap steel literally is a plank of wood that looks kind of like a guitar that sits on your lap. That's why it's called that. The pedal steel, you're usually seated also, but it looks like kind of a little desk that sits in front of you. And then what a lot of people don't realize is there's all kinds of levers underneath of it that people are operating with their feet and their knees to kind of give it that more elaborate bend sound that you associate with country music. When you were talking about the lap steel, I just pictured every cartoon from my childhood when there would be a palm tree and they would do that sliding lap steel guitar that just is completely, completely associated with beaches in general because of all this.
Yeah, 100%. It's very interesting. And this is one piece, by the way, of the story of how we're going to get to why this music kind of sounds Hawaiian, is that a lot of this era of country music has this this traditional Hawaiian guitar, which still exists to this day. But the older back you go, the more it sounds a little more Hawaiian to me and a little bit less like traditional country.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure.
So skipping ahead a little bit, we've got, this kind of persists and people remain interested in Hawaiian music. And of course, like we said, it's blending into other genres. But of course, the U.S. gets involved in a pretty big war. Some may even say a world war, which concerns Hawaii rather specifically. We of course are like stationing bases on Hawaii. This is the primary reason that the United States wanted Hawaii in the first place, is that it's a great base to help project power across the Pacific region. Even though we are a Pacific nation, the mainland U.S. is a heck of a far way from the like eastern part of the world. And so having a convenient way station where one can stop and resupply and get fuel and all this is super critical to being able to, project your Navy out into that general area. So we're doing this the whole time. This leads to, the base at Pearl Harbor. But of course, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the U.S. starts flooding a lot of troops into Pearl Harbor. We get embroiled in World War II, and all sorts of people from, Madison, Kenosha, Wisconsin, and every other part of the country are suddenly finding themselves stationed on Hawaii or in a boat, down in the South Pacific, places that, these people would never have gone to in their lives ever.
I've never seen nothing like this in Sheboygan.
Right. And this is, of course, a time too, like these days, everybody that I know seemingly, like gets an opportunity at some point in their life, not everybody, but many, many people to travel to different parts of the world, to go to Europe or to go to Fiji or go to Australia and all these places. At this time, that was not a thing you were most likely doing.
Yeah. Oh, no. Like,
unless you had a gun in your hand, there was no reason for them to be sending you out to those places.
Yeah. Yeah. You were a lot more confined than you are now. Even in just like a lot of people just didn't leave their neighborhoods as frequently as people do now.
Yeah, people barely moved states. Nobody was taking a honeymoon to Fiji, right? in this period of time.
No,
you would have to be rather wealthy, and even then, I don't know if that was super in vogue.
No, nobody was talking about that.
Yeah. So a bunch of people that would never ever see this culture are being sent down there and getting, involved in it, and it's rubbing off on them and all this. And, yada yadaing over several years of the Great World War II, which is a weird thing to yada yada over. That war eventually ends, and all these people, all these American servicemen and servicemen from all over the world, of course, are sent home. They're sent back to Kenosha, Wisconsin, and everywhere else. With a certain, I think there's probably an affection. At the same time, it's war, so it's hard to say. But they certainly were impacted in a significant way by these parts of the South Pacific that they spent some time in. Maybe unexpectedly.
Yeah. It's interesting to think like their families. They're coming back and like, I saw all this crazy. I'm not talking about the wartime stuff. I'm just talking about being somewhere like Fiji or anywhere in the South Pacific that's so different from anywhere on the mainland, and trying to explain this to your family pre everyone having a cell phone camera in their pocket. Everyone would be like, what are you even talking about?
Yeah,
I have no idea.
Right?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a wild thing to even imagine. It's very difficult for almost anyone alive now to really appreciate that to that same degree. My grandpa was out in the South Pacific Theater in World War II. Yeah.
Wow.
But he was pretty short on the war stories, to be honest.
A lot of people are. Yeah.
Yeah. He I don't know. I didn't get the sense it was trauma related. He always seemed, he was obviously much older than me. He was born in 1918. And so he kind of always acted like, these things are classified secret information, and I can't just be, loose lips sink ships,
all
basically.
Right. Fair enough. Well, hey, I think he's right.
Fair enough. So anyway, this, of course, sets this tone for a lot of people that are now suddenly back in mainland America and trying to figure out what their lives look like again. Having these memories, I don't want to say looking back fondly. I'm being a little guarded about that because, it's the war, but it's many years that people are remembering. And so this sets us up for the first of our true Christmas South Pacific songs, which is 1946's Christmas Island, parentheses, Christmas in the South Sea Islands by the Andrews Sisters. This is 1946. Yeah. Do you know the song?
Yes. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
It was played last night by those musicians, funnily enough. It was already in my notes, but it was cool to hear live. I can't explain to you how how odd I found it to just be in my neighborhood hearing people play all these songs when I was already planning on talking about them today.
It's perfect timing. I think it really got you in the mood.
It super did. That was part of why I was like, all right, I've got to go.
Yep. I'll get out of my recliner, take my slippers off, and get down there.
It's research, right?
That's right.
So, this is released basically immediately after the war, and explicitly linking Christmas with this tropical kind of area. There's even one line in the song of "Snow falls white on the sand at night," which makes no sense.
Sounds good, though.
It sounds great.
Yeah. It's a good line that, makes no sense, but it's fun to say.
Yeah, and this becomes, a hit, I think, in a lot of ways, just from, people that just recently got back from there, having these memories and having these sounds kind of brought in. It speaks to a lot of people at the time, very early on. Yeah,
absolutely. And a lot of people probably are, it's a nice blend, right, of American style music with Hawaiian style music. And so it's a nice thing that everybody can appreciate. And the people that went over there, it's just it's hard. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just all coalesces into one experience that everybody obviously resonated with. A lot of people like this song.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good thing that you kind of note on, which is that the early versions of Hawaiian music coming to the United States are largely, we'll say, traditional Hawaiian with that new, of course, instrument, the steel guitar. And then Hapa Haole music comes out, and this is a nice little fusion of more traditional American music with more traditional Hawaiian music. And then this pendulum continues to swing. And by the time you get to Christmas Island, this is a largely just a traditional Western song in a lot of ways that is topically about the South Pacific and has that familiar steel guitar and a few other elements in there. And this is really what starts kind of triggering to people's brains in the West, at least, that little sound that makes it tropical.
Right. Yes. That is now.
That's the thing.
That's that glide that everybody knows.
Interesting note here. So my buddy that I was with last night, he lived in Australia for a number of years, and he was telling me, and I haven't dug into this, but he was like, I don't know if this song has aged so well. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, Christmas Island is like the Guantanamo Bay for Australia.
Oh,
which I did not know. That's what he was telling me. I did not know that
either. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where they ship folks off to.
Oh, ooh, well, I don't think the Andrews sisters knew that.
I don't think it was at the time. And, it sounds great. Like, we're going to send you to Christmas Island. You're like, well, that sounds lovely.
Well, at least it's
what
not
could be bad
Bay.
about that?
Yeah.
Sounds nice to me right now. You could have conned me into buying a timeshare there, 24 hours ago.
Scott, I'll see you on Christmas Island. All right. That sounds great. Let's go.
Mm-hmm. So as we push a little bit forward into time, as we get closer to like the early 1950s, these same people that had fought in the war are starting to settle into these traditional Eisenhower, very 1950s lives in the suburbs. Things are a little bit plain, a little bit uniform in a lot of parts of the country. And so people start looking for escapism in some ways, little way to exoticize their life that they have in some suburban area that feels a little bit like all the other suburban areas everywhere else. And one of the many tendrils that this kind of takes is the beginnings of tiki culture. You hate tiki stuff, which is why I took this episode. I think it's great. I think it's kitschy and it's great.
Hate's a strong word. It doesn't attract me. Let's put it that. Like I talked about on the last episode, I am a gray Pacific Northwest boy, and that's what I like. So all the colors and happy vibes are not the thing that I go for. But I can understand why it's magnetic for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about it. I find it lovely and kitschy and cute. But this becomes a thing that kind of grows throughout the 1950s and grows in popularity. You have bars like Don the Beachcomber and Trader Vic's that are starting to expand in all sorts of different ways around the country, bringing people this quote unquote, Hawaiian experience that is maybe fairly questionably really like a traditional Hawaiian experience, but it has these kitschy elements, these things that make you feel like you're at the beach and you're on vacation, even if you're just in the town that you live in. Mm-hmm. Some of these places would have, I've been to some of the old stodgy versions of these places where they'll have big shows that happen and like fake rain that falls from the ceiling and all of this. It's really something that they put on there. Of note, so Trader Vic's, and I didn't like dig into this, but what I remember from it. So Trader Vic's at one point was like all around the country, and this is like one of the famous tiki bars you go to. They invented a lot of like famous tiki drinks, Trader Vic's grog, and all this stuff. Almost all of them are gone now. Not all though. There are a few. I have been to one, and I was staying for years at the Hilton, the Atlanta Hilton, because I would go down there to go to Shaky Knees, which is a good festival. It's still going on, but I did it for a couple of years in a row. And we would always stay there. I had Hilton points, so it was kind of easy, and walk over to the festival from there. It was only a couple years into staying there that I was digging in on a Reddit or Wikipedia wormhole on Trader Vic's and tiki culture and stuff, and discovered that one of the few remaining Trader Vic's is in the basement of the Atlanta Hilton.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is crazy. And so the next time I went, I was like, I have to see. And sure enough, I went down, and it's all the way down in the basement beneath this hotel, and has a very The Shining sort of vibe to it. There's not a whole lot of people down there. But my wife and I, then my girlfriend, I guess, got a drink there, and it was lovely. It was a great experience. What's so funny about these old 1950s tiki style places, because this is what this was, they hadn't really renovated at all, is you might think of a tiki bar these days as like mostly a bar. You're going to go there and drink a bunch of rum drinks and stuff, and they might have some appetizers and stuff, but not these places. These are like white tablecloth, fine dining in the 1950s terms, style establishments. You get a reservation, you go and sit down at the white tablecloth, and they have, water and iced tea, and there's a server wearing a white smock or whatever, and you get the poo-poo platter and, and all this stuff. And of course, a bunch of tiki drinks as well, but it's way more stodgy and like fine dining oriented than it is like Margaritaville and Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah, I've only been in a tiki bar a handful of times, once in Seattle, and I can't remember where else, but my experience was much more in line with what you were talking about before. You show up, they're like, how big of a Mai Tai do you want?
Right.
And and I'm like, well, yeah, I'll have that. And I don't know what else we got here. And they're like, we have Mai Tais and blue Hawaiians. I'm like, okay. And what else? And they're like, that's pretty much it. That's what we got here.
There's a whole variety of classical tiki drinks.
No, I'm kidding. It was just mostly drinks, though, is the point. And
yes,
maybe some coconut shrimp if you ask real nice. There wasn't a lot of options.
I've been to tiki bars the world over. In fact, a lot of good ones. I've had some memorable nights in Silver Lake in LA. In San Francisco, that has like a few, like some of the Pacific areas have them. One, I forget the name of it, but it's in Brooklyn. And the floors, like it's like any other Brooklyn bar. Like it's like pretty super, super narrow, and you walk in, and inside the floors are just covered in sand. Like thickly covered in like 2, 3, 4 inches of sand.
That's
and you
heavy.
march in off the street in Brooklyn, and there you are, transported to a tropical paradise. And that's what I like about tiki culture, and I think a lot of other people do too, even in this time, is the ability to like duck in somewhere in the winter and take your coat off, and suddenly you're on a Pacific island. It's stupid, but I find it fun.
I don't want to know what is in the first 10 feet of sand of that place. It's probably pretty gross.
It's probably pretty gross, but after 3, 4, 6 Mai Tais, it doesn't matter.
Nothing's gross.
You ensconce yourself. You're down there rolling around in the sand, happy as can be.
Okay, you're kind of selling me on it. I actually want to see that. I want to see the sand place. There's a place here in Portland called the Alibi, and it's a rather famous bar, but it looks like a tiki bar from the outside. I've never been in it though, and now I'm kind of thinking, this is a really famous bar for our area as far as bars go. And maybe I need to... The tiki vibes always made me go like, it's not for me. But now I'm thinking, maybe I need to go in there.
I want you to take me there. That sounds great.
Okay. All right. Let's check it out next time you're here.
That sounds fantastic. So this is like the underpinning in the early 50s, like really late 40s to early 50s. This is kind of happening. This is building, and people are going to these places, and it's a very hip spot to be at anywhere in the country. And so this is the world that kind of underpins our next big song that we were talking about, Mele Kalikimaka, the famous, the Hawaiian Christmas song. Yes. You've probably heard this song, even if you don't know the song itself. You've probably heard it in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, Catch Me If You Can, LA Confidential. It's all around in a lot of different movies. The version that most people know is sung by Bing Crosby. Yep.
That's the one I know.
Yeah, and the Andrews sisters are involved in that one too. So they're kind of the same people. This came out in 1950 on Decca Records. It's been covered a ton. It's a huge thing, and it was written by a songwriter named R. Alex Anderson, who lived in Hawaii almost his whole life. I believe he was born in Hawaii too. And I have a little quote from him when he was talking about why he wrote the song in 1949. He said, "Well, I'll tell you, a stenographer in our office, this is just before Christmas, and we were all leaving at 5 o'clock, and she was next to me, and she said, 'Mr. Anderson, how come there's no Hawaiian Christmas songs?' She said they take all the hymns and they put Hawaiian words to the hymns, but there's no original melody. Well, that spurred me right away. I thought, what a good idea. I thought this over and over a period of a couple days. It came into my head. I put it down on paper, and I've been singing it ever since."
Okay.
So Bing Crosby, of course, was a frequent visitor and golf partner of Anderson. So he already knew the guy already. Anderson played the song for Crosby, and Crosby loved it and was like, "We got to put this on my upcoming album." And he cuts a version of it, and it's a huge hit.
And Bing Crosby, that is, it's probably a little bit hard for modern listeners to understand. That is like Elvis Presley or somebody being like, "I want to cut your song." Like that's a lotto ticket right there. Big time.
And of note, the phrase Mele Kalikimaka, it's a loan phrase, so it doesn't mean anything in Hawaiian exactly. It came about like in that same period we were talking about earlier, like late 19th century, early 20th century, when they were trying to find a way to do Merry Christmas in Hawaiian, but the Hawaiian language doesn't really have like a lot of those phoneticisms. So there's not really a good way to do it. So they kind of settled on this. Mele Kalikimaka kind of incorporated the sounds of Merry Christmas in the closest way they could kind of make it make sense into Hawaiian. So that phrase already existed, and he grabbed the phrase and, put that like super catchy hooky melody behind it, and Bing Crosby recorded it, and, it was a huge, massive hit.
Yes. And we're still singing it to this day. In fact, I'm probably going to sing it later today.
Yeah, that was a big thing. And the sort of musical evolution of Hawaiian American hybrid fusion music in no world stops there. Like the thing that this will be a whole episode at some point. So I don't want to say too much about it. But we kind of have to talk about exotica music a little bit. So are you familiar with exotica as a genre?
No.
Okay.
At least not to my knowledge.
It's something you should take a whirl on. It's interesting. It's basically this like almost entirely instrumental music from this period that's incorporating like typical like orchestra musicians. Of course, they'll have like a steel guitar and some other stuff here and there. But really what sets it apart is they start using a lot of interesting like found sounds. So there'll be like birds and frogs and water rushing and things like this. Happening inside of the music too, like a lot of it, like a dense thicket of birds and water sounds and all this, with some like orchestral arrangements happening at the same time. It's very much meant to like probably meant to be played in tiki bars.
I was gonna say,
but also like meant to immediately transport you to this time. And this is like a whole cool thing. Martin Denny and Les Baxter are kind of credited as the like original folks that invented this genre in many ways. The vibraphone features in it a lot. They're using a lot of exotic percussion and drums and bongos and things like that. Like I said, like the lush sound effects and stuff that's happening the whole time. It's a really interesting world. What's interesting about it is it doesn't feel to me like early 1950s music. It feels too like experimental, like in a good way. It feels very experimental and weird. I mean, this is an era where like Bing Crosby is huge. And you have these guys making these like crazy soundscapes that are just bizarre in a lot of ways. It's really unique.
Yeah, when you think about what was required to make those records as well back then, now we can get found sounds on our phone while we're walking about. How do I know? I've done it before. And you put it in your digital audio workstation and you can have as many tracks as you want. So to incorporate like these really thick textures and all these, found sounds and exotic noises, to even think about doing that at the time is not something I would have expected. So now I'm very curious.
Yeah, it's curious. So I'll paraphrase this story that I heard in researching this about Martin Denny, one of the originators of this genre. So he was, as I recall, it's been a couple of days since I read this, but he was playing with his band in this. They were hired as kind of the house band for this hotel that I believe was in Hawaii. That was super, super tiki in every possible way. There were pools and all, tiki bars and all this sort of stuff. And they hire him to kind of play in there. And so his band's playing every night and just doing, the classic normal gig. He apparently paid really well. So they were happy. And he's playing one night and there's all these frogs that are nearby because, they're on an island. And while they're making the music, the frogs are riveted and going crazy and doing all this crazy stuff. But once they like take a break between songs, the frogs all shut up. As just sort of their natural reflex, when they hear things riveting, they're riveting. And then when everything gets quiet, they clam up. So this happens a few times and they notice it. And the band members start after a little bit impersonating the frogs or the birds and making sounds themselves. And it gets kind of crazy and silly and fun. The audience is playing along and all this. And it's just happening totally organically. And they just have some fun like this that night. And the next day he goes and it's time for his gig again. And he's talking to one of the people that's staying at the hotel. And they're like, hey, I really enjoyed your set last night or whatever. Are you going to do the one with the frogs again? And he was like, oh, that wasn't a thing I really intended to do. It just happened that way. But he was like, as soon as somebody asked me that, I knew, oh, this is something. And so they started incorporating these sounds of frogs and birds and all this into the music. And that in many ways created the exotica movement like that. Because I agree, it's very, very strange in early 1950s music to suddenly put a bunch of frog and bird sounds on your like recording. It makes sense to me that just happened totally organically as a weird thing, like out of nowhere.
Yeah, that sounds more like something I'd expect out of coked up 1970s David Bowie than, some sort of straight laced.
Then a guy wearing a suit. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, that story makes all the sense in the world. And I can imagine as a listener, if it really is syncing up that way, it would be like, wow, play the song with the frogs again. That sounds cool.
Yeah, you're like, that was a great bit. I would assume the same. Like, oh, the frogs always do this, and the band members start making frog noise, and the audience plays along. And it's just like a bit they do every night.
Right. That's really fun. I love that story.
Yeah, I love things like that. So Exotica goes on and persists in many ways even today. And I'm not going to cover all of that because it's kind of a cool story in and of itself. But know that that's happening at the same time. And this takes us to this world by the mid 50s or so, where you very much have like a lot of Hawaiian influence, and there's still more to come on that front. But also, like we talked about earlier, Hawaiian elements like the steel guitar becoming, just like you got to have them in country music and other places. And this is the era in which Blue Christmas comes out from Elvis Presley. So not even necessarily intended to be, they didn't write it being like, this is going to be a tropical song exactly. Like when people were doing that at this time, they were very clear about it. Because tiki stuff was big, all this culture was like really, really buzzy. It's just that it's recorded in this era where these elements are everywhere, and it's such an important kind of cultural thing at the time that it creeps in all of these ways. And then you get, again, if you listen to Blue Christmas, there are a lot of, hapahole elements inside of that song.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like how like 808 beats have snuck their way into everything now.
Yeah, the 808s in country music, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All over it.
Yep. Yeah, it became so inescapable culturally that it's just like, I guess we'll put that in there now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's the thing is like, this is 57. Like, that's not even like the end or the peak. This whole like tiki mania and everything continues to crest upwards into 1959. So Hawaii achieves statehood finally in 1959. And this creates just like an even more massive surge of celebration, interest in tiki stuff. Have you seen the Brady Bunch episode where they go to Hawaii?
I watched it in Hawaii as a kid, but I don't remember it very well. Yeah.
I don't remember it that well. I just remember seeing it. I'm not sure when it was filmed or anything, but there's like this haunted like little head, like a little Hawaiian tribal head that they have that's like following them around or something.
Something like that. Yeah, it was really strange, really weird.
It was definitely like a 2-part episode, I think, because I think they went to Hawaii to shoot it.
Yeah. I have this really weird memory of, and I can like picture the weird hotel we were staying in and everything as a kid. I was pretty young, so I don't. It's very foggy, but I have this distinct memory of that episode for some reason, and probably not a single other episode of the Brady Bunch.
Now that you mentioned that, I think same here. That's the one that I remember. I don't know why.
Yeah. Must have been an important one. Probably because of the weird head.
I think so too. Yeah. It was like an oddly kind of spooky Brady Bunch episode, which is not a thing they did very often.
No.
Anyway, I'm sure there are podcasts about the Brady Bunch.
Marsha, the Brady Bunch podcast.
And if you want to see Blake, you can find him on the Marsha podcast, but I'm not there. Anyway, in this period, that's kind of the point, is like things are building all throughout the 40s and 50s, and Tiki Mania is getting more and more popular, and the music's creeping in other places. And then you drop on top of that the bomb of, oh my God, there's a 50th state, and everyone has to go out and get new flags, and everyone has to learn a new capital that they didn't memorize in 3rd grade alongside the other ones. There's a ton of interest, and the music is right there to back it up. And there's a song that comes out basically this exact time. In 1959, the Surfers come out with the song "Here Comes Santa in His Red Canoe."
In his red canoe. Okay.
Yeah, it's strange. And this is kind of bringing in a bit of a new genre that people will refer to as rockahula, which is basically those like traditional Hawaiian instruments and vibes. Like there's like the ukulele and stuff, but they're bringing in a traditional drum kit and a little bit more rock and roll elements and swing and swagger and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Now I've got to listen to this song just out of curiosity because that is a weird title.
Yeah, it's strange. It's kind of what you're thinking in some ways.
Cool.
But again, so I mean, Hawaii is becoming a state in August of 1959. This song is coming out in Christmas season of 1959. So this is just hitting at exactly the right time in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Now, a lot of people tell the story of tiki music and Hawaiian culture. And in that story, they basically view surf rock as being like what Nirvana was to hair metal.
Okay.
That's a lot of times how you see it in the lineage of like, oh, it's really booming and it kind of reaches this apex in 1959, 60, 61. And then surf rock comes in and kind of boots it out. And now it's not really all that relevant. From a musical perspective, I disagree with this viewpoint. I think in many ways, what's happening in the 40s and 50s and early 60s with Hawaiian music and tiki culture, I see that as very logically leading us to a place where surf rock becomes an emergent twist on this genre. I don't view it as like a totally different thing putting in, bookending this period in music. I see it as kind of a natural evolution where it's like we said, if the music is starting out 100% Hawaiian, in 1893, and then it's like, 60% Hawaiian in the 30s. And then by the time you're to the 50s, it's like 30, 10, 20% Hawaiian. By the time you get to surf rock, I think it's like 5-10%
right.
Hawaiian. This is where you're fully, grouping rock and roll or going to rock and roll for most of like your rhythms and things like that. But there are still elements that are happening in surf rock that I think are very emergent from this Hawaiian music that's happening.
Well, in surf rock too, it's inescapably tied to like the beach culture. That's the whole thing. I think more people associate it with California than Hawaii, maybe.
Oh, sure.
But there's a whole lot of surfing going on in Hawaii. They kind of invented it as far as I'm aware. So I would think the two would be completely linked. And yeah, I think I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I mean, obviously, like it's its own thing and very much like a much more rock and roll version of what's happening. But I see them as cousins rather than anything diametrically opposed to it. And so for my telling of Hawaiian Christmas music, surf rock is in the lineage and we're counting it.
I count it too. I'm with you.
Good. So surf rock happens. And, people like Dick Dale are popularizing this crazy new sound. And you do have these like cool chromatic like slides and things that are happening that to me like share some elements with Hawaiian music like that. This feels like it's emergent from exotica and Hawaiian music in a lot of ways. This does not feel diametrical to me. It feels very much influenced by that. And that becomes the major music of the time. And so again, it's funny. Throughout like freaking all of history, at least in America, it's all just people trying to emulate, Hawaii and then California. Like when I was growing up, it was like everyone wants to be a California surfer. And in the 60s, everyone wanted to be a California surfer. And in the 50s, everyone wanted to be a, Hawaiian surfer or whatever. This is just like always, it's such a pervasive influence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Except you didn't grow up in the Pacific Northwest where we're like, California? Ew. Gross. Yeah. We don't do that. No, we sit up here and brood. That's what we do.
You maybe you had the right idea. The rest of us were still entranced at the time.
It's a Portland thing. We're just I think it's a legal requirement to have some sort of grudge against California for unknown reasons. Actually.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, many, many years ago when I came to visit you, I rented a car in California and then drove it up from San Francisco to Portland. So I had California plates and people were not nice in Oregon to me with my California plates. I'm like, they're not mine. I can't be held responsible.
I didn't do it. I'm from Indiana.
Originally, yes.
Yes.
Anywho, surf rock itself very much makes a lot of Christmas music also. So you have like famously Sleigh Ride by the Ventures in 1965. And this is interesting to me too, because it's another instrumental surfy song, which there's a lot of instrumental stuff in the Hawaiian music that we've been talking about up to this point, certainly with like almost all of exotica. And you also see like the Safaris releasing Christmas stuff. It becomes this this very popular thing. You'll see a lot of surf rock Christmas. And so that kind of, for me, puts a little bit of a capstone on this this history all the way through, but it very much doesn't stop, is the point.
Okay. Right on.
So for me, the thesis that I came in with, which is like, well, not really thesis, the question I came in with, which is like, why does so much of this music sound Hawaiian?
Mm-hmm.
Really comes down to like a couple of different like related answers. You know, for one, where you have like Bing Crosby and Mele Kalikimaka, this is because you have this post-war era, like we talked about, where Hawaiian culture is everywhere, South Pacific culture is everywhere. People are listening to it and they love these interesting exotic sounds. So that, you know, kind of explains that, you know, really clearly. Things like Blue Christmas that have like a lot of these same elements. This is a little bit more of a story of just like how pervasive Hawaiian culture is at this time and how much it's seeping in to other genres, which is why those sounds feel that way. And I think it's something worth noting too, that like a lot of it feels like living in America in the mid 2020s and even 2010s, everyone acts as though like the 1950s are the original like heritage of America. And that's like what everybody wants to go back to, even though there's like a whole bunch, 2 centuries odd, you know, before that. It feels like the 1950s, you know, that post-war America feels like the beginning of everything. You know what I mean?
I think it is kind of the beginning of modern America. Yeah. I guess, if that makes any sense. And I think another element to why so much Christmas music feels Hawaiian is because a lot of the biggest songs, the classic Christmas songs, quote unquote, came from this era. And we're still listening to them today. So it's in fact, like, it'd be hard to find any modern equivalents to Blue Christmas, I would think, that are as big and as well known as some of those songs that came out of this era. So therefore that just kind of permeated our brain, but we don't think of it that way because we just think of Blue Christmas, the song, not the culture that created it.
Definitely. I think it's also, I don't know that I'm like really explaining this very well, but like, it's curious. Recorded music was around before the 1950s. But like, if you were to stack up the amount of songs that like, you know, the average person would be familiar with, you will see like vastly more songs from the 50s than songs from the 40s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. People didn't have access to, I mean, there was recorded music, but not everybody had a record player. Yeah. By the 50s, that's when everybody, quote unquote, started having refrigerators and record players and things that are now kind of commonplace, or the modern versions of them are commonplace. We got to remember in the 40s, that wasn't a thing. Yeah. 1940s America, maybe that's why we think of it so much. 1940s America and 1950s America were very different places, despite not being that far along the timeline different.
Totally. And that's the thing, you know, when we get to a holiday, people start reaching into their past. There's something that feels comforting about things from their past that either that they're nostalgic for when they were a child. So, you know, you get a lot of family traditions and, oh, my dad loved this song, so we like to listen to this song. But even things that pre-exist us and our parents or anything like that. Like the only time most people will ever go to the ballet in their life is to see the Nutcracker.
Yep.
And that's it. And none of us are like, oh, when I was a kid, the ballet was where everyone would be.
Right.
It's someone older than that's memory of a thing that we're still exploring. So in these periods, we reach back in time is I guess what I'm getting at. And the 1950s often feels like that original bookend of the cultural things that we reach back to. You have It's a Wonderful Life, which is, I guess, like 44, 45, 46, I think.
Something like that.
I could be wrong about that. And that's just a little bit beforehand. So anyway, as long as that's the way that our cultural, reachbacks will behave, we're always going to be reaching back to this period that, due to nothing having to do with Christmas at all, is just pretty weirdly Hawaiian flavored.
Yeah. Yep. It was just the culture of the time, and it has continued to this day. And I don't see any sign of it slowing down or going away. So, and I don't really want it to. I like all these songs. They tickle my nostalgia button, and I am a very nostalgic person. So, yeah, which is why you've got me reinterested in tiki bars, because I kind of forgot about the nostalgic element around tiki bars. I'm like, actually, that is kind of fun. I do like 1950s. Like, I like the idea of 1950s culture. I know the reality was different, but I like the idea of the crazy cars with the big wings and rock and roll and all that stuff. Like, I love.
You were like everybody
concept.
Else alive in America right now with that. I find it very strange. Like, a lot of my conservative friends or family members will be like, we need to go back to the 1950s, back when, there was none of this or that I don't like, whatever. And then also my friends on the far left will be like, we need to go back to the 1950s when there were strong unions and good pay and pensions and all this. I'm like, well, geez, seemingly the only thing any of you guys can agree on is that the Eisenhower years were the best that it got. I don't agree. But
I don't agree either. I actually think that despite all the craziness, we are living through some pretty great times to be average, I should say. We have access to a lot of really, really cool things that are like great grandparents would think was black magic, So like, I'm not saying everything's perfect now or that we shouldn't strive for better, but I do think that realistically speaking, if you're being objective, there's some pretty great things about the modern era that the 50s don't offer us. But I do like the idea of it. I just recognize that it's an idea. That's not reality.
Yeah. And I feel it too, listening to Blue Christmas or sitting in a 1950s car, these things are cool. They feel very cool, but it's always the cream of the crop, man. That's the thing about nostalgia, is that everything gets better in hindsight because you only remember the good things or the really important things.
Oh, I'm finding myself nostalgic for like late 1980s Subaru GL wagons. Those things were $200 when I was a kid. And now I'm finding myself going like, I want one of those very slow things for some reason.
Yep.
And it's only nostalgia. They're not a better car than what I drive right now.
Our memories are strange. This is kind of random, but a thing that I notice a lot is, everyone will be like, oh, I'm so tired of living in unprecedented times. These days, there's just always a new story. And I'm like, dude, there's always been a new story. It's just when you look back to the 90s, you don't see all those because most of them don't matter. You just see like the 10 to 20 stories that really mattered and shaped our future in a lot of ways. You're not seeing that. Yeah, you turn on CNN in the 90s and there was also always a like, can you believe this person who no one remembers anymore did this thing that no one remembers anymore?
Yeah, well, a lot of it too, and I think this is where a lot of nostalgia comes in. People are nostalgic for these times when they were a kid. And I am too. I get it. And that's because for a lot of us, not everybody, but for a lot of us, our parents and those older than us were the shield that made us feel like everything was normal. They absorbed all the crap so that we could just be kids and not have to deal with it. So in our brains, we're like, things weren't as crazy back then. Yep. Actually, look at history and look at, like, if you actually break down what was going on in the 80s and 90s for our generation, things were buck wild then too.
Yeah. Like, I never worried about money in the 80s. Like, you were a child. Somebody else was worrying about money. I assure you they were.
I promise you my dad was. I know he was.
Like, things were just simpler then. And I'm like, dude, you could turn on the TV back then and, hear about the Iran-Contra scandal where, the government was subverting itself in many ways to create, piles of money to fund things that Congress said that they couldn't fund. There's crazy stuff is the point. And there kind of always has been. And I think you nailed it of like, that didn't seem so bad. Like, because you were 5.
Right. Yeah. Or that's even up to like 17 in a lot of ways. You're like kind of shielded, for a lot of people, not everybody, of course, but a lot of people are shielded and makes childhood feel normal. And that's what your parents are supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So, of course, if you feel nostalgic for a certain time, there's a decent chance that your parents did a decent job.
And if you feel nostalgic for 1950s Tiki Mania Christmas, I hope that you will put on some old, some Elvis or some Bing Crosby or some Patsy Cline, buy a 750 or heck, let's just go 1 3/4 liters of white rum and a couple of large bottles of fruit juice. Heck, get a little bottle of grenadine and just pour all that stuff together in basically any combo. Any combo is just going to be a different tiki drink. So you can't go wrong. Just start pouring and, see where it takes you. That's my recommendation
I
this
love
Christmas.
the 50s. The 1950s America was as good as had to be alive. Look at that guy with a funny hat coming down the chimney. Well, dear listener, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this holiday and tiki-themed episode. And if you want more, you can subscribe wherever you're getting this digital download to your brain, and we would really appreciate it. Throw us a comment, throw us a like, share it with your friends, all that good stuff. We really appreciate you, and we'll talk to you on the internet very soon.